Hello, I would like to welcome you to our webinar today on developing your marketing plan for 2016. We're happy to have you all here today. First, I'd like to introduce myself briefly. Many of you have been to our webinars before and probably know that I have a background as an in-house law firm marketing director, and I started professional services marketing about 20 years ago. I do all kinds of things that I absolutely love, like serving on the ethics committee, the Lawyers Board of Professional Responsibility, and I do a syndicated column in Attorney at Law magazine, and that's syndicated in 23 cities across the United States. So I've been very active in marketing legal services, both serving as the chair of the MSBA's client service section, but I also teach at 3 Midwestern law schools, which is wonderful because then I'm able to influence attorneys when they're still able to be influenced, when they're still in law school. So I'd like to talk for a moment about the materials that I pulled together for you. Generally, when I do webinars, I'm of the belief that sharing information is more important than anything. So I've put together some materials for you that include a format for you to actually develop your marketing plan for 2016, as well as a sales pipeline tracking tool that we'll talk about during the webinar. I also included a couple of PDFs, 3 PDFs that I think will be very helpful for you. One of them is 40 marketing ideas you can do in 5 minutes or less. I promise that's true. I hear from people all the time, I don't have time to market. I also included a LinkedIn checklist so that you can ensure that you have an all-star LinkedIn profile. And then finally, I put a piece in here on how to develop compelling representative experience, so you can add that to your biography. So let's just briefly discuss what we're going to cover today as we look at developing your 2016 marketing plan. We're going to talk about your best clients and contacts and how to identify those individuals. We're going to get into the A-level criteria. My business partner, Christy Gusick, and I were just discussing this afternoon, how important it is to have A-level clients. So we're going to help you and provide some tools to help you develop your own list of criteria in terms of what makes for a really good client for you. We're also going to help walk you through some processes that will allow you to communicate what really makes you unique in the marketplace. That's why your clients hire you, is because they perceive that you have some unique skills. We're also going to look at your target audiences, who it is you're marketing to, who are those most likely to purchase your services. We're going to discuss key messages and the importance of those key messages in your overall marketing plan, as well as moving into the development of some marketing objectives for you. There's a lot of information in the handout on how to develop marketing objectives. We're going to then talk about the revenue goal. It's very important as a professional that you set a revenue goal for yourself, and we're going to talk about how best to do that versus just saying, I want to generate a lot of new clients next year. So we're going to get more specific than that. And then finally, I always tell people that marketing and action planning fall into 2 categories. The action that you take in terms of marketing projects like LinkedIn, updating your LinkedIn profile or planning a seminar, but then the action that you take with specific relationships that you're trying to drive forward. So let's start by taking a look at the building blocks, the foundational elements of your strategic marketing plan. First of all, it's important to step back. Now, you can relate to this if you're a financial advisor or an attorney. This is a very analogous process that you likely use when you work with your own clients. You step back and you assess. You look at what's worked, what hasn't worked. You take a snapshot of your individual situation. And that's why we have these little disparate drops of water. Next, you move into the strategic planning phase where you pull all those drops together and you say, here's what I'm going to do by when, here's how it's going to work, I'm going to put action plans around this, and you develop your plan. Third, and very important obviously, is your implementation, your focus on implementation. Making sure that what you're doing is going to have that ripple effect so that if you, for example, do a blog post, that you might be able to turn that into an article for publication or a presentation to deliver to an audience of prospective clients. So we want to help you implement the strategies that are going to have that ripple effect and not just be one-shot tactics that you implement. And finally, measurement of results. Anything that you do in marketing can be measured. And so we're going to talk about that throughout the course of this presentation today in terms of how to measure results of your marketing efforts. Now, for those of you who have been on our webinars in the past, this is probably a little bit of review for you. But many years ago, I coined the term the 4 pillars of marketing because it was my belief that, number one, I had to simplify what is marketing really all about for professionals. And I boiled it down to 4 key areas. And your marketing plan should have elements of each of these 4 areas. The first one is about retaining and growing the relationships that you have with your existing clients, contacts, referral sources. Leverage the best of what is before you move into pillar number 2, which is attracting new clients and new business development. And you can see the bullets underneath are some of the subcomponents of each one of my pillars of marketing in terms of what you need to do to attract new clients and develop new business. Pillar number 3 is all about what are you doing to increase your name recognition and awareness in the marketplace. You can be the greatest professional, but if people don't know who you are, it may all be for naught. So there are some things that we're going to talk about in terms of increasing your name recognition and awareness. And then finally, targeted and effective communications with a focus on the word targeted. We are not big believers in direct mail, mass communications of any sort, even to some extent advertising, unless it's extremely targeted. What we want to be able to do is to use communications to help underscore the fact that you are a competent, qualified professional. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, but these are really the elements of your marketing plan. So let's move into step number 1. Again, I've been doing marketing with professionals for over 20 years. And what I found is that it's better to simplify rather than to make it this cumbersome process. So these are the steps that are simplified to help you develop your marketing plan. So as you look at your best contacts, I want this to be manageable for you. I want you to identify your top 10 list of current clients, prospective clients, and referral sources. And I would add a bullet, and I would say your past clients as well. It's important to look both behind as well as in front of you when you're looking at your top 10 contacts in each of these key areas. As you know, in professional services, most of your business comes to you through referrals, and that's why this process is so important, but it's also why I want to make it manageable for you. A lot of people have CRMs, they have client management databases that keep track of every little thing that you do with a client. Sometimes those can be too much, and they're challenging to keep current, which is why I want your marketing plan to be based around 20 or 30 key people that are your A-level contacts. Now, after you've identified those individuals, I've included in your materials on page 3 an example of a contact management, sales tracking, sales pipeline tool. It's also available as an Excel download. If you'd like to follow up with us, we can send this to you as an Excel document. The key here, and the very most important part of this, you probably guessed it, it's the very last column that says next step. So once you get your clients' contacts, referral sources into this tool, you want to look at what type of opportunities do I have with them. If they're an existing client, who referred them to me? What is my probability of making a sale, of actually doing business with this person? What do I think the revenue potential might be for next year? And finally, what are you going to do to drive those relationships forward by always having a next step? Really, really important to always have a next step. I've had a lot of clients say, oh, I've got this great contact. I had lunch with them. And I said, and what was your next step? How did you leave the lunch so that there was a legitimate follow-up? And usually it's, oh, well, they just said that they would send me business. And my encouragement to you is anytime you're talking with a high stakes connection, whether it's coffee, lunch, or a random running into them in the Skyway system, you always want to think about what you want that next step to be so that you have something to follow up on, so that that action is yours, instead of thinking, well, they're going to call me if they have a need. No, always figure out how the next step can be something that you can take action on. The second thing is to really know and understand what your ideal clients and referral sources have in common. Now, this may be a bit of a repeat, but A-level client criteria is so important. And why is it important? Because you need to listen to your gut. You need to know that if you're talking with someone and there's some red flag going off that says, I had another client like this and it didn't turn out very well, you need to listen to that intuition and probably pass on working with that client. The goal, of course, is to have all A-level clients. And obviously, that's not going to happen right away. But the longer you work at identifying that criteria, the more likely it is that your clients over time will be A-level clients. So what criteria do we find is most important? It isn't just the blank checkbook and the ability to pay. Yes, that is a big part of it. However, or assets that they have, or resources that they can draw upon. Generally speaking, in our business, and I believe in yours as well, some of the best criteria for our clients includes they trust us, they respect us. By and large, they will defer to us and they will do what we recommend. Yes, they'll ask questions, which is great, but you want someone who isn't going to be second guessing you all the time. One of the best criteria that I use when I'm looking at a prospective client is, would I refer this person to someone else? If you're talking to someone and they're just really rubbing you the wrong way and they're, for whatever reason, you're not connecting with them, it's not likely going to be a very desirable situation if they do become a client of yours. One of the ways that you can also develop your A-level client criteria is to think about those clients that you're working with. You're probably working with some of them right now, and they're not joyful for you. They're not people who, when you see that they're emailing or calling, you're excited because you're looking forward to helping them move forward. You sort of dread working with them. I don't know how else to say it. You know what I mean? That's a good way to identify the A-level clients, because you can say, well, what is it about this person? Well, they're always calling me, they're always asking, they're second guessing, they don't trust me, they check with other resources or other professionals before they actually will take my advice. So you can get a lot of good A-level client criteria by backing into it through the relationships you have with clients that are not A-level. Now let's move into a really important, all of this is important of course, but let's move into something that you have the ability to do, and that is to define to people in your network what really makes you unique. So how do you define? Actually, on page 4 of your materials, there are some questions that are designed to help you identify what makes you unique. And it's thinking about, let's say you're a financial advisor, let's say you're a lawyer or a consultant or some other business professional. People aren't likely going to be able to easily find you and hire you if you're swimming with this big school of fish. However, if you have the ability to define why your clients work with you and the value you bring to them, you are going to be able to attract the right kind of A-level clients. There's a concept I like to discuss here that asks you, what are your key hire me messages? They have to be messages that surround the absolute value you bring. So in other words, you have to look beyond what you think makes you unique, and you have to really think about what feedback you've gotten from your clients. When they tell you, wow, I looked at a few different professionals and I chose you because, that's golden, and that is going to help you over time determine what makes you unique. If you have an area of expertise that other professionals come to you for, chances are that's something that makes you really unique. Maybe you have, as a financial advisor, a lot of expertise in deferred stock options, or maybe as a family law attorney, you have expertise in international adoptions. Well, those are things that truly differentiate you in the marketplace, because the goal is we want you to have a niche. We want you to be able to define where you have the highest level of visibility, where your knowledge and expertise gives you great credibility, because you know what you're talking about, you have the subject matter expertise, and that is your niche. And having a niche is a critical tool to being able to effectively market and differentiate yourself in a marketplace that has a plethora of others who do what you do. So having a niche does not preclude you. I've had a lot of professionals say, well, if I have a niche, I might be limiting myself, and people won't want to work with me because they think I only do this one thing. Your niche is really like picking a major in college. It's something that you want to have extra expertise on. You want to be sought after for your expertise. You want to write on those topics, present every chance you get, because writing and speaking are great ways to underscore that niche that you have, but it doesn't preclude you from doing the bread and butter work. It simply differentiates you so that people choose to work with you because of the niche area, and then, of course, we'll work with you in many other areas as well. So I've done a whole webinar on the PSM website if you're interested on how to define your niche. It's a big topic, but it's also very, very important to your marketing plan as you're stepping back and really looking at how to conquer the world in 2016. Now let's go into the identification of your target audiences. I'm sure that sounds all marketing jargony, but all it means is, who do you want to market to? Who are the people? There's this absolute sea of people, but guess what? They're not all your prospective clients. Who are the people that you're marketing to? Where have you generated clients in the past? If you have an opportunity, it's the end of the year, run a report of the clients that you've worked with in the past 3 or 4 years and ask yourself, what do they have in common? We have a number of financial advisory firms that we work with and a number of law firms, and what they do is they identify, let's see, I work with a lot of physicians, so I'm going to start targeting physicians. Or I seem to be attracting a number of business owners, so I'm going to target business owners. The media, the news media can be a very important audience. The key is you have to know who it is that you're marketing to, because again, that speaks directly to having a focus, to having more than just, here's who I am, here's what I do it all, work with me, because that's never going to work in this environment today, this competitive environment where it's all about people wanting to work with the best of the best in their field based on what that client needs. So your goal and your mission is to take this broad group of people who could be your target audience and really narrow it down, but do it strategically based on where your target audiences have come from in the past. That's always a good exercise, to review the past clients that you've had and really look at what they have in common to see if you want to do more targeted marketing around some of those audiences. So once you have a couple of audiences where you know you have a unique niche and you have differentiation, then you start looking at your key messages. Now, key messages are pretty simple. It's, why do your clients hire you? What is it about your approach that clients resonate with and then choose to hire you? What value do you bring to your clients? Remember that key messages are not about the bulleted list of what you do. It's about the value you bring, the solutions that you provide, the problems that you solve. Your key messages need to be driven by the feedback that you get from your best clients. They're always going to be giving you little offhanded compliments throughout the engagement, I'm sure, and it's important to listen to those and maybe even jot them down, because from a client's perspective, they're giving you this feedback that you want to be able to share with other people who might want to work with you. And it's also a nice way to say, well, here's what my clients have said about the work that I do with them, or here's what my clients have said about why they hired me instead of one of my competitors. It makes it easier to say nice things about yourself if some of your key messages can be framed as feedback that you've received from your clients. The key messages are critical in absolutely everything you do in marketing, from blog posts that you create and articles you write, to the content on your website, to the biography that you write. Your key messages need to be consistently repeated so that people will realize, okay, this is a lawyer, but this is a lawyer who really focuses on working with physicians who've been wronged in the workplace. Or this is a financial advisor who works with executives who have complex stock option planning issues. So think about what you hear from your clients and develop your key messages focused on why clients hire you and the value you bring. Now let's move into marketing objectives. Marketing objectives provide the roadmap for you. Marketing objectives will give you the clear picture of what you want to achieve. It's what gives your marketing plan focus. And I'm sure you've all heard this, but I'm going to put it up here again because it's so important to remind people of that. Creating marketing objectives, they need to be SMART, and what that means is that they need to be very specific. They need to be measurable and include dates, numbers, timelines. They need to be achievable. You can't set an objective that is just so pie in the sky that you're never going to achieve it. So it does have to be attainable. It has to be results oriented and tied to the overall goals and your growth goals and your practice. But then it has to have a deadline to say that I want to amass 500 or over 500 contacts on LinkedIn. Well, that's all fine and good, but put some pressure on yourself and tell yourself, okay, I want to do that by the end of March of 2016. I think it's realistic that I will be able to attract over 500 quality LinkedIn contacts by this date. It's specific, it's measurable, you can do it, it's results oriented, and it has a deadline. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but obviously where you set your marketing objectives is in the 4 pillars of marketing and all of these subcomponents: client satisfaction, client service. You'll notice in the materials, pages 5 through 8 include key areas. I'm asking you questions that will help you determine what your objectives are in all of these areas. Now, for you to have a really solid marketing plan, you don't need to have an objective under every single one of these areas. But what you do want is to have a couple of objectives under at least, well, one or two objectives under each one of the pillars of marketing. Because what you want to implement is a well-balanced marketing plan. You don't want to spend all of your time just communicating and sending out e-newsletters to the exclusion of other things. The key to the objective setting is that it's going to help you set objectives around each pillar of marketing, which then is going to result in that balanced marketing strategy, which is much more likely to succeed if you do it this way. So there, as I mentioned, there are a lot of prompts in the materials. Now, this is something that a lot of professionals, I think people who are in the financial industry are more inclined to do this. Most of the lawyers that I've worked with don't necessarily put as much time into really thinking about that revenue goal that they have for the upcoming year, or they look at what they did last year and they increase it by 10%. But what I'm encouraging you to do, because you need something to put your arms around in terms of a real business development goal. So you'll see on page 9 that I've included an area for you to do a little bit of a revenue history. You can break it down by service or whatever works best for you, but it gives you an opportunity to see what the curve has been with various different clients. Now, obviously, if you're a litigator, you might want to, because when someone is done and their case is concluded, they hope that they won't see you again, likely. So you have a lot of business development that you have to do. I've always contended that it's harder to market a litigation practice than it is a general business practice or financial services that are more relationship based. The bottom line is, take that time to do an analysis of where your revenue has come from in the past, particularly when you look at your revenue goal for 2016. It's all about, what revenue do I already have that's on the books? You know that as of December 31, everything isn't just going to end. You're going to have carryover into 2016. Estimate that. Put your estimator's hat on and say, well, what can I expect to generate from this particular client? What have I generated over the past 2 or 3 years, which is why we have you do a little bit more of a longitudinal approach and look at the past few years. And then what you do is you identify what amount of revenue you want to generate. Maybe you want to generate $500,000 in revenue, $200,000 in revenue, whatever your goal is. You're then able to subtract what you have forecasted you will receive from those clients that are currently engaged with you, and you can identify then your real business development goal. So it's your 2016 revenue goal minus the planned revenue that you have forecasted. That's where you find that variance. That's where you find that, boy, if I want to make that $500,000 revenue goal this year, I need to generate $150,000 or $200,000 of new business. And then you can get your arms around that and say, well, what's realistic? How am I going to generate that $200,000? Do I want $10,000, $20,000 clients? Do I want a couple of really big fish? And how do I go about that? So having a number that you can focus on is going to help you throughout this whole process in terms of your key messages, your niches, what makes you unique, your target audiences, your key messages. So give yourself something to actually work toward, a real business development goal. Now let's turn to, obviously, an important part of your marketing plan. You might know that my business partner, Christy, and I do a lot of outsourced marketing. The reason that we do outsourced marketing is because if a client really needs the marketing assistance and all we do for them is develop a marketing plan, but we don't help them implement it through action planning, they're probably not going to be able to implement it. So the action planning is what really brings your marketing plan to life. It's where you look at all of your objectives, and let me just show you what I mean here. You've already set some objectives back in the materials. You've identified what you want, what's realistic, what's measurable, when you want to do this by, the date. Then the action plan is about the tactics. The action plan is, for example, to achieve a client satisfaction rating of 95% by June 30th of 2016. Well, so that's a pretty specific and measurable objective. You want to increase your client satisfaction. So tactics, what can you do that will help implement that objective? So one example to use the objective that I just stated about client satisfaction. Number one, you could implement an end of case or a survey at the end of your time with that client, if that's appropriate, to say, how did we do? What feedback do you have for us? Can we use a testimonial from you on our website? So it's something that you can, that specifically relates to how you're going to implement that objective. The other nice thing, and a good reason to have a marketing plan, is that I'm sure many of you get inundated with calls from all kinds of organizations saying, here, pay to advertise here, be in our directory. If you have a marketing plan, it allows you to say, this is not in my marketing plan, this is not one of my objectives, so thank you anyway. Because otherwise you think, oh my goodness, well, what if that might be a good thing? What am I missing out on? You know, they're making it sound like all I have to do is pay money and my phone's not going to stop ringing and I'm going to have all this new business. but I'm here to tell you that the best source of your new business is, you guessed it, within your current base of contacts. Which is why, and aren't we happy that we don't have to use these crummy old Rolodexes anymore? I'm dating myself, but hey, I had Rolodexes in a couple of my earlier jobs, and you know, they worked, but thank goodness we don't have to do that now. But what's important here to know is that, remember what I said in the very beginning, your action plan is about the activities you're going to pursue, but it's also about staying in touch with your best contacts. That's where the sales pipeline comes into play, where you're actually able to say, what is my next step? For those of you who operate their life using their calendar, which I think is probably almost all of us, make sure that you put those goals of when you want to follow up with that individual on your calendar. Make your marketing activities just as important as everything else you're doing in terms of serving your clients, delivering services, doing your marketing, and ensuring your future has a pipeline full of really high quality A-level prospective clients is important. And the best way to do that is not by throwing money at advertising. It's by staying connected with the people who you know, like, trust, respect. And it isn't about identifying someone. Sometimes this happens to me. I'll get a call from someone and they'll say, oh, hi, Terrie, I haven't seen you for 18 years. It's not usually that bad. Okay, I haven't seen you in 4 years. But then they want to network. Well, usually what that means is if someone calls me out of the blue that hasn't stayed in touch with me, my first thought is, I wonder what they want. And that's not what you ever want, which is why it's so important to have this action plan for your best contacts. Use the sales pipeline. Always have a next step. And whatever it takes to put it into your tickler system, onto your calendar, make sure that you do it, because those contacts are going to generate all of your future revenue. They're either going to send you more work or they're going to refer others to you. So let's do a brief recap, and then I'm going to talk about some of the specific things that you can do to beef up your marketing tools. So a recap of the actual marketing planning process is, again, identifying your best contacts, developing your key messages, and then figuring out what audiences those messages should be delivered to. Every single audience is going to have different messages, so you're not necessarily looking for the one size fits all. When you're developing your messages, don't say we are an exceptional firm and we deliver fabulous client service, or, you know, our focus is on our clients. Go to a lot of different websites and take a look at how they think they're differentiating, and what you'll realize is that their messages all sound the same. So use this opportunity to come up with some very unique, interesting, differentiating messages for those audiences. Take the time to create those SMART marketing objectives. They are the tools that will allow you to then develop those action plans. Marketing objectives are about what you want to accomplish. The action plans are about how you're going to accomplish them specifically. Now, I have a friend who is a sales management coach, and what he always tells his sales forces is that if you do the right things consistently over time, you will be successful. So we're talking the right things. How do you know you're doing the right things? Well, you put this process in place and you develop a marketing plan. Consistently. That means that you're not going to be hot and cold. You're not going to have marketing Mondays and then think that all your marketing is going to be done in this 3-hour block of time that you have on Mondays. You have to be consistent, and you have to do marketing over time. You have to be realistic and don't put yourself under pressure, or the pressure of believing that things are going to have an immediate return. Some marketing activities are more likely to generate a faster return, but others, for example, joining a trade association, building those relationships, writing, speaking, that's more of a midterm to sometimes even a long-term strategy, but it works. It works. So think about committing to those action plans, and I've given you a few tools to do just that. Now let's look at what I did for this section. Is I really thought about If someone is just starting out, what's most important for them to have and to do a great job of? And I'm also giving you some additional tools as well. But for example, one of the most important things that you have as a marketing tool is your biography on your website. It goes without saying that you must have a website, and I'm sure all of you probably do. But when you get to the bio page, it's the time to acknowledge that 80% of any firm's traffic ends up on the bio pages. The people who go to your website want to see you and your team, and they want to learn about you, because chances are they've already been referred to you. So you've been referred to them, which means someone says, wow, you should really call this person. And you think, wow, I trust this person, I respect the person who made the referral, but you still go online and you check them out. In fact, there are statistics out there, but it's in the 90th percentile that people are not just going to call you, they're going to go online and check you out. So make sure that you have a biography that really underscores, that's easy to read, that doesn't go on and on and on and on so that you have to keep scrolling. In this situation, we have the biography, but then we have different tabs. This is a very accomplished individual. So we have results, we have articles that he has written, we have community involvement and awards. So by organizing your bio in a way that's more palatable, another thing I like is the client service philosophy. I think that's really helpful, and it shows a little bit of the personal side of you and how you approach your work with clients. But let's just take a quick look at the results. So if you were to click on results, you would realize that, okay, here's a whole page full of this representative experience. Obviously, you don't betray the confidence of your client, but what you do is you talk about, this was the type of client. This is the problem that they came to us with. And you'll see that these are just one-sentence summaries. This was the approach that we used to dealing with that client's problem, and here's the solution. And if you use that format consistently, and you do this in all of the areas that you focus on and that you have a niche in and that you would like to replicate that work, it takes away the need for you to say, well, I've done this case and that case. And nobody likes to stand there and talk about all the great things that they've done. So if you put your representative experience on your biography as a link through your biography, it really helps a prospective client or referral source see that you have done exactly what they need, and that's what they're looking for when they go to your website. Another thing that makes people famous is writing, and I would augment this to say it's writing, it's speaking. Whether you're writing blog posts, whether you're writing articles for publication, writing for your website, writing for LinkedIn, it's important. Writing and speaking are the two things, and I think I alluded to this earlier, but writing and speaking are the two things that successful professionals I've worked with have said, that's how I got my expertise. I started writing, that's how I became known as this subject matter expert, this sought after presenter, is because I kept writing and speaking on the topics that I had just a little bit more knowledge and expertise on than others who do what I do. And if you do that consistently over time, again, you will be successful. Just a couple of little pointers in terms of blog posts. It's really important. Nobody is going to likely just stumble upon your blog post. What's important is that if you are blogging or your firm is blogging on a regular basis, it has to be part of a much broader communication strategy. What I mean by that is there should be social media posts that then drive people to your blog post. There should be firm communications. Check out our newest blog posts in this area. There should be the blog posts. I didn't highlight this, but if we went back to Larry Schaefer's biography, you can click and see the blog posts that he has written. So we've actually created back on his bio what I would consider to be a mini microsite. Now what that means is you go to somebody's bio and you have everything that you could possibly need to know about that individual right there on their biography page. So it's a microcosm of your expertise. So writing blog posts is a great way to do that. Make sure that you have a really wonderful LinkedIn profile. I'm just amazed sometimes when I go to LinkedIn profiles and I see that they're just lacking information and they don't have a picture. I also have materials available for you that give you a literal checklist. This checklist is 2 pages long. If you sit down with it on a Saturday morning and you start at the top and go all the way to the bottom, you are going to have what is referred to as an all-star LinkedIn profile. That goes without saying that you really need to put the time in, and also make sure that you aspire to having over 500 contacts. Now, don't get me wrong, they need to be real. They need to be people that you really do know, because what will happen is someone might approach you and say, hey, Terrie, I see you know Joe Smith, and I really wanted to meet Joe. Would you introduce me? So it'd be a little embarrassing to say, I really don't even know Joe, even though he's a connection. So make sure that your connections are people that you actually know. And then don't be afraid of this term up in the top bar on LinkedIn that says advanced. This is where where the rubber meets the road in terms of really being able to use LinkedIn as a tool to get connected to people that you want to meet. So you can do keyword searches, you can search by name, by company, you can search by location. What I always encourage people to do, though, is only search their first and second level connections. I don't know about you, but some of the groups I'm in have 10,000 members. So it doesn't make sense for me to search for a connection any further than my second level connections. So what that means is my contacts, connections. That's as far as you really want to go in the advanced search. But please try it out. Spend some time after this webinar and look at those target audiences that you have. And in this case, we were just doing an example of a CPA. Find out how many CPAs are that you already know, but also who your contacts know. So LinkedIn, I can't stress how important that is, and I hope that you will take this to heart and use that LinkedIn checklist and really develop an all-star profile. I've actually had some clients that I've worked with tell me that this was the most valuable piece of information that I ever shared with them, which is to do something every single day to build your practice. It's not about having an hour on a Friday afternoon where you quote unquote do marketing. This is about thinking, how can I do something every day to build my practice? Many of you have probably heard of the book called Good to Great. One of the key points of that book is that you want to be working on your business, not just in your business. You're all entrepreneurs. If you're consultants, if you're employed by a large firm, you're still an entrepreneur because you have to build your individual practice. Doing something every day weaves marketing and business development through the fabric of your practice, and that is how you become successful. It's part of the doing the right things consistently will make you successful. This is about the consistency part. The handout that I have has literally 40 marketing ideas that you can do in 5 minutes or less. And I have developed these over many, many years, and they work. And if you keep this almost in front of you as a checklist or near you, and you've realized, I've got this 38-page document I'm waiting on to be printed, I'm going to do one of these marketing activities. If you consistently do that, you will see results. Now at this stage, because this is a recorded webinar, for those of you who've hung in there, we had some technical difficulties this morning for the live webinar, so we do not have the ability to do questions live. However, I encourage you, I'm just going to leave this slide up here. You have my email address, you have our website. On our website, psm-marketing.com, you're going to find resources, and in the resources you will find a webinar archive so that you can go back through and you can actually view every webinar that we've done. And I offer this to people, which is if you see a webinar that you like, send me an email and I will send you the materials. If you weren't able to download the materials earlier today when the technical difficulty started, email me and I will send the materials to you that I've been referencing. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your time. I hope that this webinar has provided informative ideas, creative ideas that sparked a little bit of creativity in you to want to create a marketing plan for yourself. It's the roadmap that you will follow. It will ensure that you're on the right track. It will be based on all of the marketing best practices that I've used over my 20+ year career. And I am confident that for those of you who do take the time to develop your marketing plan, you will achieve the results that you're looking for. I also want to remind you that we're here, both Christy and I are here as a resource for you. So if you have any questions, go to our website. We just added this kind of cool functionality on our biography pages where you can actually schedule a 15-minute call with us. You can do this on your own. Just go to the PSM-marketing, go to our bios, and you'll see that there's the ability to do just that. So we look forward to offering webinars in 2016, so please watch for those. And again, thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful holiday.